The smell of burnt turkey and fake gratitude hung thick in the air as I pulled into the driveway of Jade's childhood home. Same peeling paint, same crooked mailbox, same feeling that I was about to walk into a den of vultures wearing their Sunday best. But hey, it was Thanksgiving, and apparently I was supposed to be thankful for the privilege of bankrolling this circus act for another year. I'm Miles Grafton, 40 years old, logistics coordinator at Midwest Distribution, and apparently, the world's biggest sucker. At least, that's what I was about to find out. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The house looked like a Norman Rockwell painting if Norman Rockwell had been addicted to debt and passive aggression. Janet Grafton, my mother-in-law, had outdone herself with the decorations this year. Orange and brown streamers everywhere, like someone had vomited autumn all over the front porch. I grabbed the bottle of wine from the passenger seat, the expensive stuff, because God forbid I show up with anything under $30, and prepared myself for another holiday performance. "Miles, you're early." Jade appeared at the door, all smiles and perfectly applied makeup. My wife of 8 years still looked good. I'll give her that. Blonde hair in one of those complicated styles that probably cost more than my work boots, wearing a dress that hugged her curves in all the right places. Too bad I was starting to wonder who else had been appreciating those curves lately. "Traffic was light," I said, kissing her cheek. She smelled like expensive perfume and secrets. "Figured I'd help set up." "Oh, you know Mom has everything under control." Jade took the wine without looking at the label. "Why don't you grab yourself a beer and relax? Everyone should be here soon." Everyone. Right. That would be her parents, Janet and Harold, my brother Ted and his wife Susan, and probably a few of Jade's girlfriends who always looked at me like I was something they'd scrape off their designer shoes. The usual suspects in the ongoing drama of my apparently very complicated life. I made my way to the kitchen, nodding at Harold, who was parked in his recliner watching football. Poor bastard had learned years ago to just keep his mouth shut and let the women run the show. Smart man. I should have taken notes. The kitchen was Janet's domain, all flowered wallpaper and motivational plaques about family and love and other lies people tell themselves. I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a Budweiser, because in this house, drinking anything imported was considered showing off. That's when I heard it. Voices from the pantry, low and urgent. Jade and her mother huddled together like conspirators planning a coup. "I'm pregnant by Conrad," Jade was whispering. "He can provide the baby with so much more than Miles ever could. A real future, you know? Miles will get over it. He always does. He's too weak to do anything about it anyway." I froze with the beer halfway to my lips. Conrad. Dr. Conrad Miller, Jade's boss at the dental clinic where she worked as a receptionist. Tall, tan, drove a BMW and wore suits that cost more than I made in a month. I'd met him at a few office parties where he'd shaken my hand with the kind of grip that said he was measuring me and finding me lacking. "Are you sure about this, honey?" Janet's voice was excited, like she was discussing vacation plans instead of her daughter's affair. "I mean, Miles has been good to us. The house payments, the car insurance. Mom, Conrad owns 3 dental practices and a car dealership. He's got a condo downtown, investments, real money. Not like Miles with his blue-collar job and his stupid loyalty to a company that'll replace him in a heartbeat." Jade's voice had that edge it got when she was explaining something to someone she thought was stupid. I'd heard it directed at me plenty of times. "But what about the prenup?" Janet asked. Jade laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "What about it? I signed it when I was young and stupid. But pregnant changes everything. Child support, custody. I'll get my share one way or another. Plus, Conrad already promised me the condo. I just need to get Miles out of the picture cleanly." I set the beer down on the counter very carefully, like it was made of dynamite. My hands weren't shaking. That was good. My heart wasn't pounding. That was better. What I was feeling wasn't rage or hurt or betrayal. It was something much more dangerous. It was clarity. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of working overtime to pay for her shopping trips, her girls' nights out, her mother's car payments, her father's medical bills. 8 years of being treated like the hired help at family gatherings, like I should be grateful for the privilege of supporting people who looked down on me. And now she was pregnant, by her boss, and planning to take me for everything I was worth in the process. I picked up my beer and walked back toward the living room, mind racing. The prenup. She'd mentioned the prenup, the one my lawyer had insisted on, much to Jade's fury at the time. The one that protected my house, the house I'd bought before we got married, the house that was in my name only, the house she'd been trying to get me to add her name to for years. "Miles!" Janet's voice called out as I passed the hallway. "Could you help me with something in the garage?" I turned to see her emerging from the kitchen, all fake smiles and nervous energy. Behind her, Jade was checking her phone, probably texting her baby daddy about their bright future together. "Sure thing, Janet." I followed her to the garage where she immediately started fussing with boxes of Christmas decorations that didn't need fussing with. "Miles, I want you to know how much we appreciate everything you do for this family," she began, not meeting my eyes. "Harold and I, we know things haven't always been easy, but Jade loves you very much." I took a long pull of my beer and studied her. Janet Grafton was 56 years old, had never worked a day in her life, and had the kind of entitlement that came from decades of having other people solve her problems. Right now, she looked nervous as hell. "That's good to know," I said, "because I love her too. Love her enough to want what's best for her." Janet relaxed a little. "Exactly. And sometimes what's best for someone isn't what they think they want, you know?" "Oh, I'm starting to understand that better than you might think." She gave me a sharp look, but before she could say anything else, car doors started slamming in the driveway. The rest of the family was arriving, which meant it was time for the real performance to begin. Ted showed up first, my older brother who'd managed to fail at every business venture he'd ever attempted while somehow maintaining an air of superiority about my simple job. Behind him came Susan, his long-suffering wife who'd learned to smile and nod at his delusions of grandeur. Then came Jade's friends, Lisa, Chantel, and Brittany, all perfectly made up and ready to spend the afternoon talking about people who weren't there. The house filled up with noise and laughter and the kind of forced cheer that made my teeth ache. I found myself watching Jade more carefully than usual, seeing things I'd missed before. The way she kept checking her phone, the way she avoided eye contact with me, the way she kept touching her stomach when she thought no one was looking, pregnant, with another man's baby, planning to take me for everything I was worth. I excused myself to the bathroom and pulled out my own phone. Jade had left hers on the kitchen counter while she helped serve dinner, and old habits are hard to break. Her passcode was still our anniversary date, because apparently even cheating wives could be sentimental. The text messages told the whole story. Weeks of them, going back months. Conrad promising her a new life, a condo downtown, financial security. Jade complaining about me, about my job, about having to pretend to be happy in our pathetic little house. Plans for how to handle the divorce, how to maximize what she could get out of me, how to spin the narrative so she came out looking like the victim. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every photo, every promise of a better life built on the ruins of mine. Then I put her phone back exactly where I'd found it and rejoined the party. Dinner was the usual affair. Harold carved the turkey while Janet directed traffic like a general commanding troops. Jade played the perfect hostess, making sure everyone had what they needed while shooting me occasional glances that I now recognized as guilt mixed with calculation. Ted held court with stories about his latest get-rich-quick scheme, some kind of cryptocurrency investment that was definitely going to make him rich this time. "Miles, you should really consider getting in on this," he was saying around a mouthful of stuffing. "I mean, your job is fine and all, but a man's got to think about the future, about providing for his family." I looked at him, This brother who'd borrowed money from me more times than I could count and never paid back a dime, giving me advice about providing for family. Then I looked at Jade, who was nodding along like she agreed, like she wasn't planning to walk away from our marriage with another man's baby and as much of my money as she could grab. "You're absolutely right, Ted," I said. "A man should definitely think about the future, about what's really important, about who deserves his loyalty and who doesn't." Something in my tone must have caught Jade's attention because she looked at me sharply. "Miles, are you feeling okay? You seem different today." "Just grateful," I said, raising my beer in a mock toast. "Grateful for family. Grateful for clarity. Grateful for the opportunity to see people for who they really are." The table went quiet for a moment, everyone trying to figure out if I was being sincere or sarcastic. Let them wonder. After dinner, while the women were in the kitchen arguing about dessert and the men were in the living room pretending to care about football, I slipped outside. Conrad's BMW was parked across the street, which meant he was probably meeting Jade somewhere nearby. Maybe at that coffee shop on Maple Street, where they thought no one would see them. I walked over to his car, casual as you please, and knelt down by the front tire. The lug nuts were tight, but not too tight for someone who'd spent years working with tools. I loosened them just enough. Not so they'd fall off immediately, but enough that they'd work themselves loose after a few miles of driving. Then I took out my keys and left a nice long scratch along the driver's side door, right where he'd see it every time he got in. Under his windshield wiper, I left a note written on a napkin from Janet's kitchen. "Enjoy your new provider. I'm taking the gravy and the house. Check the prenup. Happy Thanksgiving." By the time I got back inside, dessert was being served and everyone was settling in for the traditional post-dinner food coma. Jade was on her phone again, probably wondering why Conrad wasn't answering her texts. Maybe because he was standing on the side of the road waiting for a tow truck, but that was just speculation on my part. "Miles, could you help me with something?" Jade asked, holding up her phone. "I'm trying to send a photo to my mom, but it's not working." I took the phone, pretended to fiddle with it for a minute, and handed it back. "Looks fine to me. Maybe try turning it off and on again." What I'd actually done was forward all those text messages with Conrad to my own phone. Evidence. Because if there's one thing working in logistics teaches you, it's that you always need a paper trail. The afternoon dragged on with the usual family dysfunction. Janet complained about her neighbors. Harold fell asleep in his chair. Ted pitched his cryptocurrency scheme to anyone who'd listen. Jade's friends gossiped about people I didn't know and didn't care about. And I sat there planning. By evening, people were starting to leave. Hugs and promises to get together soon, the usual lies people tell at the end of family gatherings. I helped clean up, played the role of dutiful son-in-law one last time, and kissed Janet goodbye like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I just hadn't told them yet. The apartment above Murphy's bar wasn't much to look at, but it had three things going for it. It was cheap, it was available immediately, and it was exactly the kind of place Jade would never think to look for me. The smell of stale beer and fried food seeped through the floorboards, and the neon sign outside my window buzzed like an angry wasp, but it felt more honest than the suburban paradise I'd been living in for the past 8 years. I'd moved out on Friday, 3 days after Thanksgiving, while Jade was at work. Took only what was mine: clothes, tools, a few books, and the coffee maker I'd bought with my own money. Left the note on the kitchen table where she'd be sure to see it. "Gone to think. Don't call. Don't follow. We'll talk when I'm ready." My phone had been ringing nonstop ever since. It was Monday morning now, and I was sitting in the office of Patricia Hendricks, the best divorce attorney in 3 counties. Pat was 60 years old, had silver hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun, and wore the kind of glasses that said she could see through your bullshit from a mile away. Her office was all dark wood and law books, the kind of place where bad marriages came to die. "This is quite a collection of evidence," she said, scrolling through the screenshots on my phone. Text messages, photos, financial records. Your wife wasn't very careful about covering her tracks. Jade never thought I was smart enough to catch her, I said. Turns out being underestimated has its advantages. Pat set the phone down and leaned back in her leather chair. The prenup is solid. The house stays yours, along with your retirement accounts and investments. But Michigan is a no-fault divorce state, so the adultery doesn't affect property division as much as you might hope. What about the pregnancy? If she's pregnant by another man, you won't be responsible for child support once paternity is established. But Miles, I have to ask, are you sure you want to go nuclear on this? Divorce is messy enough without turning it into a war. I thought about 8 years of being treated like a walking ATM. 8 years of family gatherings where I was tolerated but never welcomed. 8 years of working overtime to pay for a lifestyle that was never enough, for people who saw me as useful but not valuable. Pat, they've been planning this for months. My wife, her mother, probably half the people I thought were friends. They see me as weak, as someone who'll just roll over and take whatever they dish out. I met her eyes. I want them to understand exactly how wrong they are. She smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Then let's give them an education they won't forget. The first shot was fired at 2:30 that afternoon. Pat's process server found Jade at the dental clinic and handed her the divorce papers in front of a waiting room full of patients. I wasn't there to see it, but Lisa texted me within an hour. OMG, what are you doing? Jade is hysterical. I was doing what I should have done years ago, taking control of my own life. The second shot came an hour later when I changed the locks on the house. Perfectly legal since it was my house and my name was the only one on the deed. I also changed the security code and had the system send alerts to my phone instead of hers. When Jade showed up that evening with a suitcase and Conrad in tow, they found themselves locked out of what she'd probably already started thinking of as their love nest. My phone rang at 6:47 p.m. Jade, of course. Miles, what the hell do you think you're doing? Her voice was shrill with panic and rage. This is my home too! You can't just lock me out. Actually, I can, I said calmly. It's my house, Jade. My name on the deed, my money that bought it, my signature on the mortgage. You might want to check that prenup you signed. You bastard. I'm pregnant. You can't throw a pregnant woman out on the street. You're right, I can't. Good thing that's Conrad's problem, not mine. The silence on the other end of the line was beautiful. You know? I know everything, Jade. The affair, the pregnancy, your little plan to take me for everything I'm worth. I know about the text messages, the promises, the way you and your mother have been planning this for months. I let that sink in for a moment. The only thing I don't know is why you thought I was stupid enough not to figure it out. Miles, please, let me explain. Nothing to explain. You made your choice, now live with it. Oh, and you might want to call Conrad. His car had some trouble on Thanksgiving. Hope he's got good insurance. I hung up and turned off the phone. Let her stew in that for a while. The next morning brought a steady stream of visitors to my apartment above Murphy's. First was Janet, my soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law, looking like she'd aged 5 years in 5 days. Miles, honey, I think there's been a misunderstanding, she began, settling her bulk into the apartment's single chair like she was preparing for a long negotiation. No misunderstanding, Janet. I heard you and Jade talking in the pantry on Thanksgiving, about Conrad, about the pregnancy, about how weak I am, about how I'll just roll over and take it. I was standing by the window, watching traffic, keeping my voice level. Turns out you were wrong about that last part. Her face went white. You were eavesdropping? I was getting a beer. You were plotting my financial destruction. Let's not argue about who has the moral high ground here. But Miles, think about the family. Harold's medical bills, the house payments, Jade's car. Not my problem anymore. I turned to face her. You want to know what I think about the family, Janet? I think you raised a daughter who sees marriage as a business transaction and taught her that men like me exist to be used and discarded when something better comes along. I think you've been living off my generosity for years while treating me like hired help. And I think you're here because you're scared that gravy train is about to derail. She tried tears next. Miles, please. Jade made a mistake, but she loves you. We all do. You're part of this family. No, I'm not. I'm the guy who pays the bills. There's a difference. After she left, sniffling and making vague threats about lawyers, my brother Ted showed up. He looked nervous, which was unusual for Ted. My brother had made overconfidence an art form, even when he was failing at everything he touched. Miles, buddy, we need to talk. He helped himself to a beer from my refrigerator without asking. This thing with Jade, you're making a mistake. Marriage is about forgiveness, about working through problems. Is that right? When Susan found out about your little fling with that real estate agent last year, did you give her the same speech? Ted nearly choked on his beer. How did you? Susan told Jade. Jade told me. Funny how that works. I sat down across from him. But here's the interesting part, Ted. Susan forgave you, took you back, agreed to keep quiet about it. Know why? He was looking everywhere but at me. Because you don't have any money for her to take. Your credit's shot, your business ventures keep failing, and the only reason you're not living in a trailer park is because Susan has a job with decent benefits. I leaned forward. But I'm different. I've got assets worth fighting for. So Jade's little affair isn't just about love or lust or whatever she tells herself. It's about upgrading to a better provider. Come on, Miles. Jade's not like that. Jade's exactly like that. And you know what? So are you. Ted set down his beer and tried to look offended. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know about the loan, Ted. The $5,000 Conrad lent you last month for your cryptocurrency scheme. The loan that came with strings attached. His face went pale. Miles. How much did he pay you to keep quiet about the affair? To feed him information about my finances, my schedule, my marriage? I stood up, and Ted actually flinched. How much was your brother's happiness worth, Ted? It wasn't like that. I needed the money, and Conrad said it was just business, that you'd be better off in the long run. Get out. Miles, listen. Get out. He left, but not before trying one last guilt trip about family loyalty. Rich, coming from a man who'd sold out his own brother for gambling money. That afternoon brought the phone calls. Jade's friends, her co-workers, even some people I barely knew, all wanting to know my side of the story or offer unsolicited advice about forgiveness and second chances. I let them all go to voicemail, but I did answer when Dr. Conrad Miller called. Miles, I think we should talk. His voice had that smooth, professional tone he probably used to explain expensive dental procedures to nervous patients. I'm listening. This situation has gotten out of hand. Jade is very upset, and I think there are some misunderstandings that need to be cleared up. Such as? Well, for starters, the nature of my relationship with your wife. We're colleagues, nothing more. These accusations of an affair are completely unfounded. I almost laughed. Conrad, I've got screenshots of text messages where she talks about being pregnant with your baby. Messages where you promise her a condo and a new life. Messages where she complains about having to pretend to be happy with me while planning our divorce. What kind of misunderstanding covers that? The smooth, professional voice cracked a little. Those messages, they're taken out of context. Jade was going through a difficult time, and I was offering support as a friend. A friend who loosened the lug nuts on your BMW? Silence. That's right, Conrad. I know you found my little note. I know you spent Thanksgiving evening waiting for a tow truck instead of meeting my wife at whatever sleazy motel you two had picked out. And I know you're scared, because a man who will sabotage your car might do a lot worse if you keep screwing his wife. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. See, you thought you were dealing with some blue-collar dummy who'd never figure out what was happening. But here's the thing about logistics, Conrad. It's all about planning, timing, and making sure all the pieces are in the right place at the right time. And right now, all my pieces are exactly where I want them. What do you want? I want you to stay away from my wife until the divorce is final. I want you to stop promising her things with money you don't have. And I want you to understand that if you try to interfere with the legal proceedings, I'll make sure everyone in town knows exactly what kind of man their trusted family dentist really is. You can't prove anything. I've got screenshots, Conrad. I've got photos. I've got a timeline that shows exactly when your affair started and how you've been planning to destroy my marriage. You really want to test whether I can prove it? He hung up without another word. That evening, I walked down to Murphy's bar for dinner and a beer. The place was exactly what you'd expect from a working-class dive. Dim lighting, scarred wooden tables, a jukebox that hadn't been updated since 1987, and the kind of regulars who minded their own business and expected you to do the same. Murphy himself was behind the bar, a thick-set Irishman in his 60s who'd bought the place when he retired from the fire department. He served me a Budweiser and a burger without being asked. I'd been coming in every night since I moved in, and he was good at reading people. "Rough day?" he asked, wiping down glasses with practiced efficiency. "Getting better," I said. "That's the spirit. Whatever's eating at you, it'll pass. Always does." If only he knew. The confrontation I'd been expecting came on Wednesday evening, right as I was settling in with a beer and a frozen dinner that tasted like cardboard but didn't judge my life choices. A knock at my door, followed by voices I recognized. Lisa and Chantel, Jade's best friends and loyal soldiers in the war against common sense. I opened the door to find them standing in the hallway like a delegation from the Department of Feminine Outrage. Lisa was holding a bottle of wine like a peace offering, while Chantel clutched her purse like she expected me to mug her. "Miles, we need to talk," Lisa announced, pushing past me into the apartment without being invited. She was a real estate agent, which meant she was used to walking into other people's spaces like she owned them. "Ladies," I said, closing the door behind them, "to what do I owe the pleasure?" Chantel looked around the apartment like she was cataloging evidence of my moral decay. "Miles, what you're doing to Jade is cruel and unnecessary. She's devastated." "Is she? That's interesting, because according to her text messages, she was pretty excited about starting a new life with Conrad. Funny how devastation can sneak up on a person." Lisa set the wine on my kitchen counter and turned to face me with her best professional smile. "Miles, honey, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. Jade loves you. She always has. This thing with Conrad, it's just complicated." "Complicated how? She's pregnant with another man's baby and planning to divorce me for his money. Seems pretty straightforward to me." "It's not that simple," Chantel said. "Jade has been unhappy for a long time. She felt neglected, unappreciated. Conrad was there for her when she needed someone to talk to. And apparently someone to sleep with. That's not—" Lisa started, then stopped. "Look, even if something happened, people make mistakes. Marriage is about forgiveness." I sat down on my couch and looked at these two women who'd been coming to my house for years, eating my food, drinking my beer, treating me like furniture while they gossiped about their lives. Now they were here to lecture me about forgiveness. "Let me ask you something," I said. "If your husband got another woman pregnant and planned to leave you for her money, would you forgive him?" "That's different," Chantel said quickly. "How?" Because you and Jade have history. You've built a life together." "No, Jade and I have built a financial arrangement together. I work, I pay bills, I fund her lifestyle, and in return, I get to be tolerated by her family and friends. That's not a marriage, that's a subscription service." Lisa tried a different approach. "Miles, think about what you're throwing away. 8 years of marriage, a beautiful home, a woman who loves you. A woman who loves me so much, she's carrying another man's baby." "We don't know that for sure," Chantel said desperately. I pulled out my phone and started reading. Text message from Jade to Conrad, dated November 15th. I can't wait to start our family. This baby is going to have everything: the condo, the private schools, the life I always dreamed of. Should I keep going? Both women went quiet. Here's another one, I continued, from November 20th. Miles is so clueless. He actually thinks I'm happy in that suburban dump. Thank God I won't have to pretend much longer. Miles, stop, Lisa said softly. One more. From November 18th. My friends think I'm crazy for leaving Miles, but they don't understand. He's a good provider, but Conrad is a great one. Why settle for good enough when you can have everything? Chantel was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. She didn't mean it like that. How did she mean it, Chantel? Because it sounds to me like she meant exactly what she said. I'm good enough to pay the bills, but not good enough to build a real life with. Lisa sat down across from me, her real estate agent composure finally cracking. Miles, I'm sorry. We didn't know it was this bad. You didn't want to know. It was easier to see me as the boring husband who didn't appreciate his exciting wife than to admit your friend was using me. What do you want us to do? Chantel asked. Nothing. This isn't your fight, and it's not your problem. But don't come here asking me to forgive someone who's been planning to betray me for months. And don't insult my intelligence by pretending this is all some big misunderstanding. They left without the wine, which was fine by me. It was better than the stuff I usually drank anyway. Thursday brought a visit from Harold, Jade's father, and the only member of her family I'd ever actually liked. Harold was a retired electrician who'd worked with his hands his whole life and had the kind of quiet dignity that came from knowing the value of honest work. He knocked on my door at lunchtime, hat in his hands like he was asking for a favor. Miles, you got a minute? I let him in and offered him a beer, which he accepted gratefully. We sat at my kitchen table, two working men trying to make sense of the mess our families had created. Janet sent you, I said. It wasn't a question. She did, but I wanted to come anyway. Harold took a long pull of his beer and sighed. Miles, I owe you an apology. For what? For letting my wife and daughter treat you like hired help all these years, for taking your money and your generosity without giving you the respect you deserved, for not speaking up when I should have. I studied his weathered face, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda. All I saw was genuine regret. Harold, you don't owe me anything. I do, though. You've been good to my family, better than we deserved. And this is how we repay you. He shook his head. I didn't know about the affair, Miles. I swear to you I didn't know. But you're not surprised. He was quiet for a long moment. Jade's always wanted more than what she had. Even as a little girl, she was never satisfied with her toys, her clothes, her room, always looking at what other kids had and wanting it for herself. And you think I'm just another toy she's outgrown. I think you're a good man who deserved better than what my daughter gave you. Harold finished his beer and stood up. I won't ask you to forgive her, Miles. I won't ask you to take her back. But I will ask you not to let this make you bitter. You've got too much to offer to let their mistakes ruin your life. After he left, I sat alone in my apartment thinking about the difference between Harold and the rest of his family. He'd worked hard, saved his money, treated people with respect. But he'd also enabled his wife's entitlement and his daughter's selfishness by always giving them what they wanted instead of what they needed. I wasn't going to make that mistake. Friday afternoon brought the confrontation I'd been waiting for. I was leaving the grocery store when I spotted them across the parking lot. Jade, Conrad, Lisa, Chantel, and my brother Ted huddled together like generals planning a battle. They saw me at the same time I saw them, and there was a moment of mutual recognition before they started walking toward me. Game time. Miles! Jade called out, her voice carrying that fake cheerfulness she used when she wanted something. What a coincidence! Is it? I loaded my groceries into the truck and turned to face the firing squad. Seems more like an ambush to me. Conrad stepped forward, trying to look authoritative in his expensive suit and perfect teeth. Miles, I think it's time we cleared the air about this whole situation. I'm listening. First of all, I want you to know that nothing inappropriate happened between Jade and me until after she told me her marriage was over. She came to me for support during a difficult time, and yes, feelings developed, but we never crossed any lines while she was committed to you. I looked at Jade, who was nodding along like this was the gospel truth. Is that right, Jade? Your marriage was over before you started sleeping with Conrad? Yes, she said firmly. Miles, we've been growing apart for years. We both know it. I just found the courage to admit it first. Interesting timeline, I said. Because according to your text messages, you were telling Conrad you loved him back in September, but you were still sleeping with me in October. Hell, you were still sleeping with me last week, before I found out about your little side business. Conrad's face flushed red. Those messages were taken out of context. Were they? Let me read you one from October 3rd. I pulled out my phone. Conrad, I can't wait to be free of Miles and his pathetic little life. Making love with you makes me realize what I've been missing all these years. Tonight I have to go home and pretend to be happy with him, and it makes me sick. Miles, please, Jade said, tears starting to flow. You're embarrassing everyone. I'm embarrassing everyone? You're pregnant with another man's baby, Jade. You've been planning to leave me for months while still taking my money and sleeping in my bed, and I'm the one who should be embarrassed? Ted stepped forward, trying to play the role of peacemaker. Miles, buddy, this isn't helping anyone. Why don't we all just take a step back and— Shut up, Ted. I turned to face my brother directly. How much did Conrad pay you to spy on me? What? Miles, I don't know what you're talking about. The $5,000, Ted. The loan for your cryptocurrency scheme that came with strings attached. How much of that was payment for information about my schedule, my finances, my marriage? The group went silent. Ted looked like he wanted to disappear into the asphalt. It wasn't like that, he said weakly. Then what was it like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my own brother sold me out for gambling money. I needed the cash, Miles. Susan doesn't know about the debts, and I was going to lose everything. So you decided to help them destroy my marriage instead. Real family loyalty, Ted. Chantel tried to intervene. Miles, you're being cruel. Everyone makes mistakes. You're right, Chantel. I made a mistake. I trusted people who saw me as a wallet with legs. I worked overtime to pay for a lifestyle that was never enough, for people who were planning to betray me the whole time. I looked around the group, meeting each of their eyes. But I'm done making that mistake. What's that supposed to mean? Lisa asked. It means the gravy train just derailed. No more house payments for Janet and Harold. No more car insurance for Jade. No more loans for Ted. No more playing the generous provider while you all plan my financial destruction behind my back. You can't just cut us off, Jade said, her tears turning to anger. We're family. No, you're not. Family doesn't lie, cheat, steal, and betray. Family doesn't see you as a resource to be exploited. You want to know what you are, Jade? You're my biggest mistake, and I'm about to correct it. I got in my truck and drove away, leaving them standing in the parking lot like the conspiracy they'd always been. In my rearview mirror, I could see them arguing among themselves, probably trying to figure out their next move. Let them plan. I was done being reactive. It was time to go on the offense. The abandoned amusement park on the outskirts of town had been closed for 15 years, ever since the owner went bankrupt and the county seized it for unpaid taxes. Lakeside Fun Park, they'd called it back in the day, though the lake had been more of a glorified pond, and the fun had been questionable even when the rides actually worked. Now it was a monument to broken dreams and rusted metal, the perfect place for what I had planned. It was Saturday morning, 1 week after the parking lot confrontation, and I was sitting in my truck looking at the chain-link fence that surrounded the property. The no trespassing signs were faded and full of bullet holes, and the lock on the gate looked like it hadn't been changed since the Clinton administration. My phone buzzed with another text from Jade. "Miles, please, we need to talk. This has gone too far." Too far. Right. Like planning to destroy someone's life and steal their assets was just good, clean fun, but fighting back was crossing a line. I'd spent the week putting pieces in place, making calls, setting up what Pat Hendricks called the nuclear option. The divorce papers were filed, the house was secured, and my assets were protected. But that was just defense. What I had planned for today was pure offense. The gate lock was even easier to pick than I'd expected. 10 years of working with tools and machinery had given me skills I'd never thought I'd need for breaking and entering. Not that this was really breaking and entering, since the county had been trying to find a buyer for the property for years and would probably thank me for cleaning it up. I drove through the gate and parked near what used to be the main entrance. The ticket booth was covered in graffiti, and weeds grew through cracks in the asphalt, but the basic infrastructure was still intact. More importantly, the old PA system still had power. I'd called the electric company and paid to have it turned on, claiming I was a potential buyer who needed to inspect the property. Money talks, especially when you're dealing with bureaucrats who've been trying to unload a white elephant for over a decade. I spent the morning setting up, folding tables from my truck, arranged in a circle near the old carousel, a cooler full of beer and sandwiches, like this was going to be a family picnic. Speakers connected to my phone, ready to broadcast whatever I wanted to the entire park. And in the center of it all, a stack of documents that represented the complete destruction of several people's lives. At noon, I started making calls. "Jade, it's Miles. I've been thinking about what you said, about how we need to talk. You're right. Meet me at Lakeside Fun Park at 2 o'clock. Bring Conrad, bring your friends, bring whoever you want. It's time we settled this once and for all. Miles, that place is condemned. The gate's open. Follow the main path to the carousel. And Jade, bring the pregnancy test. It's time to put all the cards on the table." I made similar calls to the others. Ted, Janet, Lisa, Chantel, even Harold, though I felt bad about dragging him into what was about to happen. But he was part of the family, and family should see how their story ends. By 1:45, they were all there, standing around like mourners at a funeral they didn't know they were attending. Jade looked nervous, Conrad looked angry, and Ted looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. The women clustered together for moral support, while Harold stood apart, watching me with the kind of expression a man gets when he knows the other shoe is about to drop. "Thank you all for coming," I said, walking to the center of the circle. "I know this is an unusual venue, but I thought it was appropriate. After all, this place is all about broken dreams and failed promises, which makes it perfect for our little family reunion." "Miles, what is this about?" Janet demanded. "If you wanted to talk, we could have met at a restaurant like civilized people." "Civilized people don't plan to destroy someone's marriage for money, Janet. Civilized people don't betray their own brothers for gambling debts, Ted. And civilized people don't get pregnant by their boss while planning to take their husband for everything he's worth, Jade." I picked up the first document from the stack. "Let's start with the divorce papers, filed on Monday, served on Tuesday. Jade, you'll notice that thanks to the prenup you signed, you get exactly what you brought to the marriage. Nothing." "That's not fair," she protested. "I've been your wife for 8 years. "You've been my financial dependent for 8 years. There's a difference." I held up my phone. "Should I read some more of your text messages? The ones where you call our marriage a prison sentence? The ones where you laugh about how easy it is to manipulate me?" Conrad stepped forward. "Miles, this is getting out of hand. Whatever problems you and Jade have, they don't involve the rest of us." "Don't they, Conrad? Let me read you something interesting I found in the public records." I picked up another document. "Dr. Conrad Miller, 3 malpractice suits in the past 2 years, 2 pending investigations by the State Dental Board, and a car dealership that's been operating without proper licensing for 6 months. His face went white. "How did you—" I told you, Conrad. Logistics is about planning and research. Did you really think I'd let you destroy my life without finding out who you really are? I turned to address the group. See, that's the thing about secrets. Everyone thinks they're the only one who has them. Jade thinks I don't know about Conrad. Conrad thinks I don't know about his business problems. Ted thinks I don't know about his gambling debts. Janet thinks I don't know about the money she's been stealing from the household accounts. I haven't stolen anything, Janet protested. Really? What do you call taking cash from the grocery money for your shopping trips? What do you call using the credit card I gave you for emergencies to buy jewelry and clothes? What do you call borrowing from the household accounts and never paying it back? I pulled out a thick folder. Bank statements, Janet. Credit card bills. A complete accounting of every penny you've taken from me over the past 3 years. It adds up to just over $12,000. Harold looked at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Janet, is this true? Harold, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear how stealing from the man who pays our bills is somehow justified. The group was starting to fracture, which was exactly what I wanted. Nothing destroys a conspiracy faster than mutual distrust. But wait, there's more, I continued, channeling my inner game show host. Ted, remember that cryptocurrency investment you were so excited about? The one Conrad was backing? My brother looked sick. Miles, please. It doesn't exist, Ted. Conrad fed you a line about guaranteed returns and easy money, and you bought it because you wanted to believe you'd finally found your big score. The $5,000 you borrowed? It's gone. Conrad used it to pay for the condo he promised Jade. That's not true, Conrad said, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Ted, when's the last time you actually saw any return on your investment? When's the last time Conrad returned your calls about the money? Ted looked at Conrad with growing realization. You snake. You played me. Now you're getting it, I said. Conrad needed cash to impress Jade, so he ran a con on my gullible brother. Ted needed money to cover his gambling debts, so he sold out his own family. Jade needed a way out of our marriage, so she seduced her boss and got pregnant to force the issue. And Janet needed spending money, so she helped herself to mine. I spread my arms wide, encompassing the whole sorry group. Ladies and gentlemen, my family, a collection of liars, thieves, and backstabbers who saw me as nothing more than a walking ATM. Miles, please, Jade said, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I do love you. I always have. I wanted more. You wanted more of my money, Jade. There's a difference. That's not true. Then prove it. I pointed to the pregnancy test I'd asked her to bring. Take the test right now in front of everyone. Let's see if you're really pregnant, or if that was just another lie to manipulate me. She clutched the box to her chest like a shield. I don't have to prove anything to you. Actually, you do. See, I've been thinking about this whole pregnancy thing, and the timeline doesn't add up. You told Conrad you were pregnant 3 weeks ago, but you were still sleeping with me 2 weeks ago. So either you're lying about being pregnant, or you're lying about who the father is. Conrad looked at Jade sharply. You said you hadn't slept with him in months. Jade looked around desperately for support, but found none. Even her friends were staring at her with dawning comprehension. Take the test, Jade, I said quietly. Right now, in front of everyone. Let's settle this once and for all. No, she whispered. No? Why not if you're telling the truth? Because I'm not pregnant. The admission hit the group like a physical blow. Conrad staggered backward, Ted cursed under his breath, and Janet made a sound like a deflating balloon. You're not pregnant, I repeated. So this whole thing, the affair, the plans to leave me, the promises to Conrad, it was all based on a lie. I thought I was pregnant, Jade said desperately. I really thought I was, and when I realized I wasn't, I didn't know how to tell you. Which you, me or Conrad? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I looked around the circle of faces, shocked, guilty, angry, ashamed. These people had been the center of my world for 8 years, and now I could see them clearly for the first time. They weren't family, they weren't friends. They were predators who'd found an easy mark and milked him for everything he was worth. Well, I said, clapping my hands together, I think that covers everything. The divorce will be final in 60 days. The house is mine, the assets are mine, and the debts you've all accumulated are yours. Janet, you'll need to find a new source of spending money. Ted, you'll need to find a new source of gambling funds. Conrad, you'll need to find a new source of investment capital. And Jade, you'll need to find a new husband to support you, because this one is officially retired from the provider business. You can't just abandon us, Janet said desperately. We're family. No, you're not. You're a collection of users and manipulators who saw me as a resource to be exploited. But here's the thing about resources. They can be depleted, and you've depleted me. I started walking toward my truck, leaving them standing in the ruins of their schemes and lies. Miles, wait! Jade called after me. Where are you going? I turned back one last time, looking at the woman I'd loved for 8 years and realizing I'd never really known her at all. I'm going to start over, Jade. Without you, without your family, without the friends who were never really friends. I'm going to build a life with people who see me as more than a paycheck. But what about us? What about everything we built together? I looked around the abandoned amusement park, at the rusted rides and broken dreams, at the family that had never been a family. This is what we built together, Jade. Nothing real, nothing lasting, nothing worth saving. Just a bunch of broken promises and faded dreams. I got in my truck and drove away, leaving them to sort through the wreckage of their own making. In my rearview mirror, I could see them arguing among themselves, probably trying to figure out who was to blame for their situation. The answer was simple. They all were. For the first time in 8 years, I was free. Free from the lies, the manipulation, the endless demands for money and support and gratitude for the privilege of being used. It felt better than I'd expected. As I drove back toward town, toward my apartment above Murphy's bar, toward whatever came next, I allowed myself a smile. They'd wanted a villain, and I'd given them one. They'd wanted someone to blame for their problems, and I'd accepted the role. But I'd also given them something else, the truth about who they really were and what they'd really been doing to me all these years. Whether they learned from it was up to them, but it wasn't my problem anymore. Nothing about them was my problem anymore.